Bike lanes are being removed in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I am in full support of it. Rip them out, grind them out, tear them out, do whatever you gotta do, get rid of them, and pave over them with a car lane. In fact, they can pave over it with the freeway, maybe 20 lanes. But either way, let's get those bike lanes up out of here. Welcome to the channel. Now that I have your attention, I am Outrage Mike, and we have to have a serious discussion today. So what happened? In Toronto, the premier, Mr. Doug Ford, has decided that bike lanes should be removed from downtown Ontario. Now, I'm not going to speak on whether the bike lanes are good or bad. That's not why I'm here. But I am in full support of them being removed, but not for the reason that you think. You see, it's not a matter of whether I think the bike lanes are good or bad. No, it has nothing to do with that. I support the bike lanes being removed because that is what the people of Ontario voted for when they voted for Doug Ford. You get the infrastructure that you vote for. And last I checked, in the most recent election results for Ontario, Doug Ford won in overwhelming fashion. So that means you, the people of Ontario, like what he is doing. And you told him that you want more of it by voting for him. So up to this point, I haven't really made my positions clear on some of these things, such as bike lanes, walkability, transit. I've mostly stayed away from those topics, as we know how social media works. He with the biggest microphone is correct, at least online. But we have to have this discussion because in Toronto, they're protesting the removal of these bike lanes. Now, that in itself is no problem. I have no issue with the people protesting something they don't like in their city. That's just fine. That's what you're supposed to do. It's your right to protest. What made me speak about this today is what the protests, or where the protests were directed in Toronto. You see, in Toronto, they weren't running up on Doug Ford. They ran up on the engineering firm that's doing what the people of Ontario voted for. That's right, they ran up into the engineering firm, a private corporation contracted with performing this job. Now, I didn't know Doug Ford was that scary to where the people of Toronto are so afraid of him that they would run to the corporation rather than the politician that you chose. Yes, you chose him. We got the results right here. The people of Ontario decided that they want what Doug Ford is selling. And that's the end of it. That's the end of discussion. Running up on a private business because they're doing what the politicians that the people voted for told them to do is one of the dumbest protests I have ever seen. It's pathetic, embarrassing. And the people running up inside of a firm should be ashamed of themselves. That's not how the process works. Now, this video isn't all about Ontario. As far as the bike lanes themselves and their utility, I don't really have an opinion on that. I spent about a week in Toronto a couple years ago, but not nearly long enough to say what I think about these bike lanes, so I'll refrain from that. The only thing I will say is that the biggest traffic problems that I saw in downtown Ontario were from road construction, where lanes were dropping here and there because of all this construction. So I don't have a personal opinion on the bike lanes, but I do support people in democratic societies getting what they vote for. And in Ontario, the people voted for Doug Ford. And Doug Ford is carrying out what the people have ordered him to do through the election. You see, Canada, like the United States, is a representative democracy. What is a representative democracy? In a representative democracy, issues are not directly voted for or voted on by the people. Instead, we have elections where you choose politicians to represent your interests and vote on your behalf. So the people of Ontario, through their election of Doug Ford, decided that they do not want those bike lanes. They'd rather them be car lanes. And if that's what the people want, then I support the people getting what they vote for. Running up into a private firm makes zero sense. If you want to protest, protest the politicians. These are political decisions. And in a democratic society, the will of the majority is the will of the people, and the majority rules. So if only a minority of people want these bike lanes, they have to go. That's democracy, baby. You need to learn how the system works. And that's all I had to say about the Canadian portion of this video. But now I want to use this story in Canada to pivot and talk to my fellow Americans, especially my fellow millennials and those behind us, Gen Z. Because what I hear, or at least what I see, is that millennials and Gen Z, we want density. We don't like driving. We're tired of the old way. We want walkability. We want transit. Do we really? Do we really? Or do we just like to complain? Before we get into all that, we need to understand how government works, because clearly a lot of Americans don't. As we can see, some of our neighbors to the north in Canada don't understand how their government works either. But I'm going to talk about American politics because I'm not Canadian and I don't know the ins and outs of their political process. So we're going to talk about America. So let's get it started. At the top, you have the federal government. The federal government, the most powerful part at this level, is what we call the legislative branch. This is your Congress. These people are the most powerful branch of government in the country, collectively at least. You have an upper house. Each state gets 2 senators in that house. You have a lower house where each state gets representatives based on their population relative to other states. In those states, districts are drawn by those states to determine which representative represents which people in the state. These are the people that write the laws of the land on the federal level. So they are the most powerful branch of the government. They don't have term limits. They can serve as long as they keep getting reelected over and over and over. And we all know there are some dinosaurs up there in DC right now. Next up is the branch that you all hear the most about, because every time you turn on the news, everyone is talking about what's going on in this branch of government. The executive branch. That is your president of the United States, the most powerful individual person in the country. The executive branch does exactly what it says. It executes. It carries out the laws written by Congress. And from a planning and land use perspective, determining how our cities look, Washington, D.C. has the least impact on how your city looks. They have the least impact on your daily life, despite this being the one that everyone pays attention to. The president is not a king. The president has the least amount of impact on your daily life of any executive in the country. In fact, most of these federal issues that we keep blasting in the headlines that we see don't even affect your daily life that much. How many people's daily life has changed significantly from March 21st to December 21st of 2024? Fundamentally, the country has not changed, at that level at least. The headlines may make you feel like it has, but it really hasn't. And it doesn't change much administration to administration. Also in DC, you have the judicial branch. These are your courts, the judges, the Supreme Court. Their job is to interpret the laws because some laws might not be crystal clear as to what is legal and what is illegal. But that is your federal government, the branch of government, the level of government that has the least power over how our cities look. Next, let's talk about the state government. This is where you need to start paying attention because this is where the real power is. At the state government, you have a governor who is like the president before a state. He is the executive of his state. He is the single most powerful person in a given state. The state governor has more power over you in your daily life than any other person in this country. If you're here in Colorado, that's Governor Polis. If you're in Texas, Greg Abbott. Ron DeSantis in Florida. Kathy Hochul in New York. And we saw how powerful governors are in 2020. Governors have enormous powers. So you really need to be paying attention to what they are doing if you care about how your cities look. And of course, similar to the federal government, there is a legislative branch of the state government with senators and House members that works in the same fashion as the federal government, but on the state level. So collectively, the state legislature is more powerful than the governor, collectively. But the governor has broad individual powers in most states. And you also have state courts, just like at the federal level. Under the state government, you have local government. Now, depending on where you live, this might be a city or a county or some type of equivalent. But it is also designed after the federal government. You have the executive, which is usually the mayor. You have a city council, which is usually the legislator. And you also have local municipal courts. This level of government has the most impact on how your cities look, at least here in America. Apparently it's different in Canada, where the Premier of Ontario was able to have direct say over what happens in the city. Outside of state highways and other large infrastructure, like interstates, the local government controls how your city looks. Ironically enough, this is where you see the least participation from Americans in general, but especially from Gen Z and millennials. This is where we have very low turnout rates. And boomers and Gen X basically run local politics. Well, how do they do that? Does their vote matter more than yours because they're 50 years old and you're 25? No. Last I checked, as long as you were 18, you get to vote. The local government determines zoning. The local government determines what can and cannot be built in your city. I said it before on a previous video. Every single structure that goes up in your city runs through your local government. The politicians that you have elected. Every single one. Every house, every street, every strip mall, every apartment runs through that local government office downtown in your city. And what the numbers show is that Gen Z, millennials, we don't care. We don't participate. We don't show up. Unless it's a presidential election year. Then we all want to vote. But outside of that, these local elections, sometimes they're won by a few hundred votes. Less than 1,000 votes can swing an entire local election. This is where your vote has the most power because the turnout is so low, but you don't participate. Non-participation is compliance and agreement with whoever won. Because what you see online is that Gen Z, millennials, we don't like driving. We want walkability. We want transit. Do you really? Do you really? Because from what I see, you don't want to vote. So When you don't vote, that tells your local politicians that you like what they're doing. You love it. You absolutely love what the boomers are doing. You love Gen X running the city because you don't participate. You comply. You don't have to take my word for it. Gen Z grew up with smartphones in their face. You know how to get on Google. Go look up your recent municipal elections that weren't in a presidential election year. Look at the percentages. Overall turnout is pitiful. But yet we want to get on here and I'm mad. I'm mad. Stop building car development. Nobody cares that you're mad online. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Mike Johnson in Denver doesn't care what you say on Reddit. Greg Abbott doesn't care that you type angry comments to him on YouTube. Kathy Hochul does not care what you say on Twitter. They don't care. They have people working for them that tells them that 20-somethings will not show up to vote. So why should they care what you think? They don't. I saw Mike Johnson do a Ask Me Anything on Reddit here in Denver to pay some lip service to the younger crowd. Because that's all it was, lip service. He knows, like I know, that on election day, you're going to stay at home. We know this. We know this. Now, one of the things people like to talk about are NIMBYs. Not in my backyard. The NIMBYs are stopping us from getting our density that we want. The NIMBYs are stopping us from getting the cities that we want. The mayor bowed down to the NIMBYs. The governor gave in to the NIMBYs. The boomers won't let us have power. The boomers have too much power. Why do NIMBYs have power? Because NIMBYs participate in the process. I'll say that again. NIMBYs have power because they participate. NIMBYs show up. Boomers show up. Gen Z don't vote. Millennials, we might vote a little bit more, but we don't vote either. Not at the local level, we don't. Not at the state level, we don't, unless it's a presidential election year. So we sit here and complain when we do nothing. Elections will never be decided on Instagram. Elections will never be decided on Reddit or in YouTube comments or on Twitter, ever. Elections will always be decided at the voting booth. So when you get online and I'm mad. Your politician doesn't care because he knows you're not going to show up. Nobody cares. Your angry comment is just a bunch of ones and zeros in a line of code. It means nothing. It means zero. Now, I'm a millennial. I know how to use social media. Obviously, I make plenty of money from it. So recently, I was on Reddit and I saw that in Denver, they have something called RNOs. I think it stands for Registered Neighborhood Organization. Now, these organizations apparently get together and discuss and talk about different issues affecting their neighborhoods. Those issues include how their neighborhoods look. And on top of that, they actually have influence with the local government. City council members listen to their opinions. Someone suggested that the people who are on Reddit join these organizations, make their voice heard. What did I see in response to that suggestion? A bunch of excuses. Why I can't participate? I don't have time, is one of the popular excuses. I don't have time. I'm so busy. I'm so busy that I don't have time to participate in my local politics. I don't have time to care how my cities look, but my politicians should read my mind and know that I want density. but I don't have time to actually participate. Politicians only understand election results. They're looking at those numbers. They're looking at who turned out, why they turned out, and how they voted. The people who just complain online are, you might as well be invisible. It's the boomers' world, and the non-voters, you just live it. It's the boomers' world, and Gen Z, you're just living in it because you have made yourself invisible. So the common complaint, let's go through some of those. I don't have time. This is one of the biggest ones. I don't have time to go and see what's going on in my neighborhood. I don't have time to know what's going on in my city. I don't have time to participate in my local elections. Really? Really? You're that busy? You must be rich then, because if you're spending that much time being that busy, you should be making hundreds and thousands and even millions of dollars. Now, in my life, I have been in the military. I worked white collar corporate America. I worked low end retail and at a restaurant. So when you say you're too busy, you don't have time, I call bullshit. Bullshit. I know what it's like to work 9 to 5. And now I do content creation. Guess which one takes more time? If you work a 9 to 5, you got time. Running a business, doing this, takes way more time than I ever had to spend working for someone else. So I call bullshit on time. But let's do a time audit. Let's do a time audit. Let's do some math. Now I'm an engineer, so I'm pretty good at math, but you don't have to be really good at math. We have something called calculators that do it for you. This is basic arithmetic that you learn in first grade. There are 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. That's 168 hours. Now let's assume you work 40 hours per week, like most Americans. And let's say it takes you, I'm going to give you extra time. I'm going to say it takes you an hour to get to work and an hour to get back home, even though the average commute is more like 20 minutes each way. So let's subtract 50 hours for work, getting to work, preparing for work for the average American. You have 118 hours remaining. Let's say you go to the gym every day, which I know most of you don't because I've seen the waistlines of my fellow Americans when I've traveled around the country. Most of us are not working out, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. I'm going to say you work out an hour a day, 7 days a week. So let's take away 7 hours. Let's say you have a girlfriend or a wife or a family, kids, and you spend 3 hours per day with them. Give you 21 hours to spend with the family or your significant other. Even though I know the majority of people who do all this complaining are single men, or at least childless men. But I'm going to give you that anyway. I'm going to give you that anyway. I'm going to give you 21 hours. You have to sleep. So I'm going to give you the full 8 hours, even though I know the average person does not sleep in the full 8 hours. But let me give you the 8 hours. 8 times 7 is 56. We'll take away 56 hours for sleeping. We're down to 34 hours, more than a full day after working, sleeping, spending time with our significant other or our family, working out. What else do we need to do? What else are we doing? 34 hours. Let's say I give you 20 hours a week to BS around, to play video games, to watch TikTok, to watch YouTube, to just lay around and do nothing. You know, everybody has to recharge. I get it. You know, we want to be entertained here and there, watch TV. Let's take 20 hours. You still have 14 hours left, and that's me giving you all these extra hours for things that I know you're not doing anyway. So Gen Z, with all this time, I don't have time to participate. You need more than 14 hours to spend an hour once every 2 weeks at a city council meeting. You need more than 14 hours to join your local neighborhood organizations that are sitting here determining how your cities look. So I call BS on the time thing because I know you're not that busy. I know you're not that busy. And it doesn't take 14 hours a week to participate in what's going on in your city. What's the next excuse? Someone on Reddit said this was boomer ass shit. Really? I love that comment. I love that comment. I love that comment. You know why it's boomers? You know why boomers run that? Because you don't participate. Of course it's boomers. When you don't participate, someone else will make the decision for you. The whole point of that person telling you to join was because there are so many boomers. So sitting here whining on Reddit isn't going to do anything. Your city council man or woman does not care. It's boomers because you don't participate. Stupid. And the other thing, someone said this was some NIMBY shit. NIMBYs. We talked about NIMBYs already earlier. NIMBYs have power because NIMBYs participate. Politicians listen to those who participate. We just saw Kathy Hochul pause congestion pricing in New York because she was scared of the people who voting against her and or her party. The politicians aren't going to come out and tell you this, but they know that millennials won't vote. They know Gen Z won't vote. They know. That's why they don't talk to you. That's why they don't care what you think. Because their data shows them that you don't care. And if you don't care, why should they care? If I were the governor of Colorado, I wouldn't care what you think either. Because I know that you're not going to show up when it counts. And millennials and Gen Z, we are content with 70-year-old Grandma Joe who bought her property in Washington Park 30 years ago, telling us what to do here in 2025. We are content with Uncle Paul, 60 years old, who bought himself a single-family home over in Congress Park back in the 80s. We're content with him running us because we don't show up and he does. We are cool with the boomers just running everything. When I was in Charlotte, I remember the last time I voted in local elections in Charlotte. When I went to vote, I'm in my mid-30s at this time. And everyone there had gray hair and was older than me. Why is a 35-year-old the youngest person at a local election? It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Because all the 20-somethings and the other younger millennials are busy with their Twitter fingers, with their Reddit fingers, talking about how mad they are. Pathetic. Now, what's the other common excuse of why I can't participate? I don't know where, when, how, or who to vote for. Really? Now, if you were 70 years old, I might actually grant you that excuse. Things are done online now. A lot of things are online now. A lot of information is posted online now rather than physical media. But you mean to tell me Gen Z who grew up with an iPhone in their face, Gen Z who grew up with tablets, Gen Z who grew up with iPads in school, doesn't know how to use Google to find out when and where the municipal elections are in your city? Is that what we're going to tell each other? We're going to say that we don't know how to get to the election spot? We don't know when these primaries are? We don't know where these primaries are being held? You know how to talk about the latest celebrity gossip. You know how to find that. You know how to find the latest TikTok trend. You know how to talk about Drake and Kendrick Lamar all last year, but you don't know how to participate in local elections? You know how to you know how to check out the sports scores? You know how to see my Lakers beating the brakes off the Denver Nuggets? But we don't know how to figure out what's going on in our city. Right. Right. Now I want to get to this part of the conversation. The media. And I'm not just talking about the mainstream media. I'm talking about social media. I'm talking about content creation. I'm talking about YouTube. I'm talking about all of it. The big question is, do we want to just whine, complain, moan, and bitch? Or do we want to actually do something about it? You see, you can look right here on YouTube and you know what type of content I'm talking about. When the content is about complaining about what already exists, views go up, engagement goes up, the money piles up. If I make a video wah about this and that, people watch. You make a video complaining about a new interstate that just got built or a city adding a lane somewhere, views go up. I'm mad. I want to complain. Raw. I want to rage. Right. Why can't we just finally build a high-speed rail like China? Do we want to just vent? Is that what it is? I mean, if that's what it is, tell me that's what it is. Then we know not to take you seriously. Now flip it around. Make a video telling people, hey, city council's voting on this issue. You need to go down to City Hall and tell them what you think. Hey, the elections are coming up. You need to go down there and make sure you vote for this candidate because he wants what we want. Guess what happens when you make that type of content? Views go down. Engagement goes way down. The money goes down. And hey, there's nothing wrong with making your money. I make good money here on YouTube, great money. Way more than I would ever make as an engineer. Way more than I would ever make working in corporate America. So get your money. But is it about the money? Or is it about actually doing something about it? Is it about outrage or venting? Or are you going to do something about it? From what I see, we just want to vent. We just want to cry. We just want to complain. Wah. No action. All complaints. That's a good recipe for keeping things the way they are. So you ask, why don't they build a train? I'm going to ask, why don't you vote? And if you did vote, if you're one of the few, I'm going to ask who you voted for and why. And if they're not doing what you want them to do, I'm going to ask, who are you primarying to replace them? So, from what I see with the content, people like to complain. It makes good money. I get it. It makes good money. We're all trying to get money here on YouTube. Even CNBC is getting in on the money train. You've seen some of the videos they posted recently. Plenty of views, plenty of angry people arguing in the comments. Let CNBC make a video telling you how to participate in your local elections to change it, and you won't watch it. And they know that. This is a huge multinational corporation. You even got Vice getting in on it. Let's complain about America, what already exists. Let's complain about them building these highways. Where's the video telling you what to do about it? They won't make that video. Because that video won't get views. And they won't make money. See, they won't tell you that, but I'll tell you what it is. That's how content works. So do we want to vent? Or do we want to take action? Make a call to action and see what happens. Your view's going down. You know it. I know it. So if it's about venting, that's cool. That's cool. Politicians won't take you seriously. Boomers will continue to rule you. While you just get mad on Reddit. While you just get mad in the comments under YouTube videos. And CNBC, Vice, and everyone else just laughs all the way to the bank on your tears. Now let me talk about the national media for a moment, because I do give some grace on this because the national media is very powerful, very influential. Despite how big social media has become, we still pale in comparison to the influence and power of the mainstream national media. If you look at the national media, if you just go on your news app on your iPhone, you're going to see mostly national media stories. You're not going to see them talking about a local government issue unless it's one that was big enough to catch national attention. Why is that? Because CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, CNBC, they all exist to make money. They're not going to tell you when your local elections are. They're not going to tell you when your politicians are approving single family home developments that put cars on the road because they're not going to make money. And I get it. They're very powerful. The stories that they post are always in our face every day. They keep telling you what the guy in DC is doing, and he has little impact on how your city looks. But they're telling you what he said to Putin, what's going on thousands of miles away. What does that have to do with your city? And those become the stories of the day. The city council in Dallas approving a massive, sprawling subdivision that puts more cars on the road for you doesn't make the national news. And again, I get it. We're all influenced by that, so that's what we see. That's what I see the most. You do have to go out of your way to find out what's going on in your city, because the national media is not going to tell you because they don't make as much money. If I talk about a federal news story, then I reach a bigger audience. So yes, you have to do your own research. You have to do your own work. Yes, you have to use Google. The next thing I want to talk about are echo chambers. There are a lot of those. What are echo chambers? Well, it's exactly like they sound. If I'm in an echo chamber, if I say something, it bounces off the wall and comes back to me the same thing that I just said. It's an echo, repeating what I just said. Let me give you an example when it comes to politics. If I have 1,000 people in a given area voting on an issue, if 200 of those people already believe what I believe, and there are 200 who will not agree with me no matter what, but then there's 600 people left somewhere in the middle, in order to win the election, I need to convince those people in the middle to see it my way and vote with me. You see, echo chambers are dangerous because what happens in an echo chamber is I get on my microphone in front of those 200 people who already believe what I believe, and I keep telling them how we are so right, we are so amazing, and anyone who doesn't agree with us just doesn't know what they're talking about. Well, we saw how that played out in November 2024, and that's one of the reasons why you have who you have in there right now. I don't go in on that. People feel the way they feel about that, but that's what happened. In 2024, people thought it was going to be one way, but it ended up being the other way because you sat in an echo chamber to where you didn't hear what other people were thinking. So when you have these social media platforms where anyone who doesn't agree with what we already agree with, I'm just going to downvote them out of my purview so I don't have to see them or engage with them. That's fine. It feels good in the moment, doesn't it? But when that election comes, you can't block out the other side. You can't win an election with only people who believe what you already believe. You need to engage with people who aren't already on your side and figure out how to get them on your side. So one of the things I see when it comes to this debate over density, transit, walkability, and such is that the people who want these things tell the people who are more skeptical of it how they're dumb, how they're stupid, how they're wrong. Well, that's why you're not getting what you want. That's never going to work. So if you want your feel-good vibes by shouting over those who might disagree with you, You're going to stay in the same spot. You're never going to win an election with a minority of the population. This is democracy. The majority opinion rules, whether you agree with it or not. So if you can't figure out how to engage and bring over people with you, if you want to just feel good in your echo chamber, you're never going to win. You're never going to change anything. So instead of downvoting or blocking out people who don't agree with you, you need to figure out why they think what they think and how can I convince them to see it my way. If you truly believe you are right, if you have the confidence in your opinion. Do you? Echo chambers, guys. Don't get caught in an echo chamber. Now, some people will say that, and this goes back to November 2024. Now I've seen some people online coping, trying to make themselves feel better by saying, well, technically he didn't get the majority of the people because of this percentage here, that percentage there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. First off, like we said earlier in the video, the non-participants who didn't vote at all, they don't matter. They might as well be invisible. They're NPCs living in a world that us voters control. They're NPCs. You don't matter. You didn't vote. Nobody cares what you think. And as far as the people who did vote, we understand the system. It's an electoral college. So yes, you can win a presidential election without getting the majority of the votes. There is something called the popular vote, which that guy, he got more of them than anyone else. So he won that too. Trying to cope and explain that away doesn't change the fact. The way you fix it is next time around, you outvote him or you outvote his party. So yes, of the people who voted, more of them chose him than your preferred candidate. And I don't care who you vote for. I just want you to participate. On the local level, you have way more power, like I said earlier. A lot of these local elections are decided by just a few hundred votes. There's no electoral college at the local level or the state level. Your vote is very powerful at the local level, and that's the one you participate in the least. Now, something else I want to get into. One of the things I see on social media is how much we worship and praise these other countries because their transportation infrastructure is so superior to America. They do it right. The Japanese are way better than us. The Europeans, it's heaven over there. And it just sucks here in America. All we can do is build for cars. We hate walkability in America. Why can't we be more like Europe? Why can't we be more like China? And they got all this high-speed rail. China is the shining example. What we see, at least what we see on social media. So let's go to Japan first. So we want to be like Japan, right? You want to be like Japan. Do you really want to be like Japan? Do you know why Japan looks the way Japan looks? From traveling around this country, the reason that places who are expanding roadways are doing them is because they are having population growth. I'll say that again. The reason why places that are expanding their roads in America are expanding them because the population is growing. I've done multiple videos on this channel about which places are growing and which ones are declining. And I've done those for a reason. They're there for reference. Americans are moving away from the Northeast and the Midwest, and they're moving to the Sun Belt. You don't see new roads being expanded in the Detroit Metro. Why? Because the Detroit Metro has pretty much the same population that it had 70 years ago. Same thing in St. Louis, Cleveland. Cleveland isn't building any new highways. They're not adding any new lanes because nobody's moving to Cleveland. The biggest cause of traffic is rapid population growth. Why is Charlotte about to add 2 more lanes to I-77? Well, millions of people are moving to Charlotte every 10 years. Why is Dallas expanding the Dallas North Tollway? Because Dallas-Fort Worth is the fastest growing metropolitan area in the country. Why is Denver about to expand Pena Boulevard to the airport? Because Denver is growing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a second. But let's talk about Japan. America should be more like Japan. Why can't we be like the Japanese? Why can't we? Do you really want to be like Japan? Folks, ladies and gentlemen, Japan is dying. Literally, Japan is dying. Japan is nearing demographic collapse. Their population is in decline. Let's say that again. Japan is dying. When your population is in decline, it is a lot easier to design transportation infrastructure around. What did I say earlier? Cleveland, St. Louis, Detroit. Traffic flows pretty smoothly. Nobody's moving there. Easy. Japan, dying. Population decline. Easy to design for. It's not growing. That's the country as a whole. America has never posted a population decline in its entire history. We are growing. But you want to be like Japan? Japan doesn't allow immigration like the United States does, legal or illegal. Because yes, native-born Americans, we are not reproducing. Our birth rate is in decline as well. But we allow a large amount of immigration to occur here to keep the population growing. You want to be like Japan? Go tell the federal government, who is actually in charge of immigration, go tell the federal government that we should stop all immigration. You start being like Japan. You start seeing less cars on the road. And you can kiss Social Security goodbye. Because who's going to pay for it if the population declines? Is that what we want, Americans? Do we really want to be like Japan? Go tell your congressman. We want to stop all immigration. Cut it down to 10% of what it is now. Roads will start clearing up. Roads will start clearing up. Is that what we want? Japan. Dying. America. Growing. Next, let's talk about Europe. Europe is paradise. This is when you really hear all over the internet. Why can't we be more like Europe? Europe does everything right. Europe is the peak of transportation infrastructure. They do everything right. It's so perfect in Europe. The cities are paved with gold if you go to Europe. Nobody drives. Everybody's walking around. Everybody's using high-speed rail in Europe. They don't have traffic because they do it right. In America, everything sucks. All we do is add lanes. Which, let me pivot for a second and talk about that. The common little troll comment that you'll see on the internet is that America keeps adding lanes. And if you add this one more lane, it's going to fix traffic. That's what the YouTube engineers will tell you, or the YouTube planners. Show me the documents where any actual professional engineer has said that adding a lane to a road is going to fix traffic. Show me that document. The purpose of the purpose of transportation infrastructure is to get people where they want to go in a reasonable amount of time. That is the purpose of any type of transportation infrastructure, whether that be a bus, a car, a train, or a plane, is to move people. The purpose of adding lanes to existing roadways is to add capacity. It is not to fix traffic. Never has been, because you cannot fix traffic. Even Europe hasn't fixed traffic. The purpose of adding a lane is to add capacity to a roadway. The added lane allows more people to get to their destination than it did before the lane got there. So no, the purpose of a lane has never been to fix traffic. Now, if you had any idea what you were talking about, you would have known that. Never has been the case. Leave the video games as games. They're fun to play, but they're not reality. So back to Europe. You want to be like Europe? My fellow Americans, do we want to be like Europe? If you want to be like Europe, let me know in the comments, because I'm about to tell you what it's like to be like Europe. Let me know if this is what you want. In Europe, This is how you get cars off the road in Europe. In Europe, do we want that $8 a gallon gas to be like Europe? Is that what we want? Do we want the gas prices to go up to $8 a gallon? Is that what we want? I mean, if it is, let me know. $8 per gallon. You want to be like Europe? You want to be like Europe? That $30 driver's license that you got in Germany make that $3,000. You want to be like Europe? $3,000 to get your license. Is that what we want, Americans? Are we ready for that? Are we ready to be like Europe? How about twice as much to get your car inspected and registered every year? You pay $300 now, make it $600. European inspections are a lot tougher than those in America. We want to be like Europe? How about an extra 40% on top of your insurance premium to keep your car, to insure your car? You want to be like Europe? We ready for that, Americans? You want to be like Europe? Are we ready? This is paradise right here we're talking about. Are we ready to be like paradise? Europe, baby. You ready for that? You know how you can just pack up your shit, say, I don't want to live in New York anymore, I want to go down south? All you got to do is hop in a U-Haul, drive to Florida, go change your address online. Now you're a Florida resident. You can't do that in Europe. You think you're going to drive from Madrid to Budapest and say, I just want to live here now? Hop in a truck, take your stuff, just drive to that country, and now you're a citizen? You don't have that freedom of movement in Europe. Is that what we want? We want to be like Europe. Do we want to be like paradise? And maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong. Maybe Americans do want to be like Europe. If I'm wrong, get you a candidate. Try to get them to run for office on the platform of $8 a gallon gas, $3,000 licenses. You won't make it out of primary. So I guess we don't want to be like Europe either. On top of that, remember what I said about growth rates in Japan? Europe isn't growing like that either. The Houston metro area alone added more people than the Netherlands and Germany combined in the past 30 years. It's easy to do it when you're not growing. It's easy. Nobody's moving there. Houston alone added more people in this metropolitan area in the past 30 years than Germany and the Netherlands combined. You don't have to add lanes when you ain't adding any people. We want to be like Europe. And what's the other country that we praise and worship online? China, of all places. China. The Chinese are doing it right. And Americans, we need to catch up to China. China is just running circles around us with transportation infrastructure. China is such a great place. They got all the high-speed rail and the bridges and the tunnels. Yes, America needs to be more like China. Why can't we just build high-speed rail like China? You want to be like China? You want to be like China? In China, if the government wants your property to build transportation infrastructure, they're going to take it. And there ain't shit you can do about it. They're going to take it. You know how the U.S. did back in the 60s to those poor neighborhoods. Don't we complain about that? Don't we complain about that online, that the U.S. unfairly took and tore through those Black and Hispanic neighborhoods in the 60s to build the interstates? We want to go back in time and be like China, where the government can take your property and you can't do anything about it? Is that what we want? I got a video on this channel about Memphis, Tennessee, when the property rights were changed as far as eminent domain being unchallenged. Do we want to be like China? No property rights? Do we want to be like China, where DC has unilateral power to take what you have and do what they want with it? You want that guy in DC to have the power that China's leadership has over your city? We want to be like China. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Let me know in the comments if you want to be like China. China doesn't have to respect your property. China doesn't have to pay its workers $20, $30 an hour to build anything. You want Americans to be paid $2 an hour to build roads, to build trains? Is that what we want? We want to be like China? $2 an hour, baby. Maybe three if you're lucky. You want to be like China? The Chinese, greatest society in the world as far as transportation goes, right? We want to be like China? Right. Now, there's something I mentioned earlier that I want to expand upon a bit. Earlier, I mentioned that, because I want to use this as an example. It's occurring here in Denver, but I want to use this as an example for the rest of the country, at least the growing parts of the country that people complain about. So in Denver, for those of you who aren't aware, we have geographically the largest airport in the country. You see, back in the 20th century, Denver built a new airport far out from the city, over in the plains, so that they could have plenty of room for it to expand when necessary, and that it would be away from people. Land was taken from Adams County and given to the city of Denver for this airport, Denver International Airport. When Denver built this airport, they built a freeway connector for it to Interstate 70. It's called Pena Boulevard. It's a 4-lane freeway divided that goes from I-70 directly to the airport. Now, when Denver built this airport, the land around it was undeveloped. Things flowed well. Pena was doing its job. Well, here recently, and very soon, the City Council of Denver is about to vote on expanding Pena Boulevard, possibly to 6 lanes. They are about to add one more lane to Pena Boulevard. Now, the people who don't know what they're talking about immediately jumped on this and said, induce demand, induce demand. Why do we keep adding lanes? Why can't people use transit? We have the A line that goes to the airport. Why don't they just expand transit? You see, this is what I spoke on earlier. You're complaining about the symptom, not the cause. The symptom is the road being expanded. The cause is the politicians that you chose, Denver, who took land that was supposed to be cleared around the airport only for airport-related activities and approved hundreds and hundreds, maybe even 1,000 single-family homes. The politicians that you chose. You see how it goes back to voting all the time? Because like I said, no structure goes up in your city without going through those people who sit downtown. But we know politicians can't turn down the money because they don't just make money on the tax revenue. No, developers have to pay to get these things approved. Yes, the city makes money just off them building it in the first place. And politicians love two things, money and power. So your politicians that you chose can't turn down that revenue. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is Denver. This is Denver. I'm gonna show you in the default mode first to make it clear. This is the airport. See this giant area up here? That's the airport. Down here is I-70. This road here is Pena Boulevard, the freeway connector in question for the airport. Let's go to satellite because this is going to tell the tale. Look at this. You see this? Montebello. What is it? Single family homes. Single family homes. Single family homes. Approved by the Denver City Council. Over and over again. What is this? A giant parking lot. Suburban style development. Isn't that what we complain about online? Your city approved this. Your leaders. Your leadership. On the other side of Pena, Green Valley Ranch. Cul-de-sac. Hundreds and hundreds of single family homes. And like I said earlier, each single family home amounts to 1 to 2 cars on the interstate. That's another car on I-70. more cars on I-225, more cars on I-25, and everything in between. And they're not done yet. They're not done. This isn't it, guys. You see this right here? More homes are coming. Let's go further out. You see this? You see where these roads are? What do you think is going to be built out here? It's already in progress. It might be built already. I don't even know. These might be outdated maps. More single family homes. More single family homes. This is what the American people demand. This is what the voters, the voting population, see how it keeps going back to politics? The voting population demands single family homes. And as you continue to build more single family homes, adding more cars to the freeway, guess what you need to do now? Now you need to expand the freeway. Now you need to add one more lane. Let me show you something else. Let's look here. This is Denver in the 1980s. Ironically, we're going to use denverurbanism.com as our source for this information. This map shows you all the single family homes in Denver, right? This area up here in question, Green Valley Ranch, Montebello. These in the red were built during the 80s. This in the gray was here before the 80s. What did Denver leadership do? They allowed these areas to be covered with single family homes because they wanted that revenue at the time that comes with these new developments. Hey, that's what politicians do. But instead of holding your leadership accountable, you just allowed them, you just sat back while they approved more and more single family homes. So Green Valley Ranch was basically empty in the 80s. Now, we got this. Guess what? These people are using Pena. It was supposed to be for the airport. Now it's for commuters and the airport. And if you've driven over there, you know the traffic jam. Not only that, it's not just the area immediately surrounding Pena. Denver's suburbs continue to grow. Now, I showed you guys on previous videos that the places that are growing in America are the places where people can get single family homes. And that's what they're moving here for, just like any other growing metro. And it's not just Denver. It's our little neighbor over here, Aurora. What has Aurora done? Aurora has annexed all this land outside the airport. Why are they doing that? Because single family homes are being developed out here in Aurora. And if you don't know where your leadership is in Aurora, if I recall, they're right down there on Alameda. Your leadership in Denver is right down there on Colfax and Broadway. Why aren't you protesting them? Because you like single family homes. You don't really want to do anything about it. You like this. And that's why they keep building it. This is what Americans want. And the people get the city that they vote for. This is democracy, baby. All this empty space out here, this is about to be single family homes in the future. So what are we talking about? What are we talking about? The lane is added because the cause of the need for the lane has already been built and continues to be built. I was in Commerce City yesterday. Guess what's going on in the northern part of that city? A lot of new single family homes. A lot of new cars on I-70. A lot of new cars for Pena Boulevard, I-25, I-225. They're coming. Commerce City's government is also approving single family homes, just like every other city in the metro. And this isn't a Denver specific thing. You can do this in your city too. Get on Google Maps and look at the outskirts of your city. Every one of those single family homes that you see are more cars on the interstate. And in response, the government is going to do what it's supposed to do. Add more capacity, which no, will not fix traffic because that is not the goal.
The goal is to add more capacity so that more people can be on the road and get to where they need to be. Now, for those who say, well, we should just expand the transit, they should use the A line. How do you suppose you know that the majority of people don't live anywhere near Union Station. I'm just south of downtown. It's not even feasible for me to go to Union Station to get to the airport. Well, they said, well, maybe we should just add more rail lines. Trust me, you don't want to talk numbers when it comes to the cost of actually adding rail. The same reason that the country can no longer plow through any neighborhood they want to build a highway is the same reason they can't plow through neighborhoods to build train tracks either. Property rights. In America, we have those. It costs a hell of a lot of money to buy up urban property to build transportation infrastructure. Money does matter. See, that's the difference with real life and a video game. In real life, money matters. When you play Sim City or City Skylines, you can do what you want to do. You know how much it would cost to even attempt to build transit that actually connected the majority of the Denver metro area to Union Station? You're talking close to $1 trillion. That's just the build out. And I don't know, it'll take, you look at Colorado's transportation budget, it'll only take them about 300 or 400 years to pay that off. Right. Leave the fantasies as fantasies. Leave reality to the big boys. But I'll tell you how to stop it. How do you stop the single family homes? How do you stop the demand for the single family homes? Well, the land is cheap. America has a lot of land. If you go ask Americans what type of neighborhood they want to raise their family in, I'm willing to bet you that over 80% of them will say they want a single family home in a suburb or a suburban-like development. You see, boomers already figured this out. And if we look at where most growth in America is occurring, it is on the outside of the cities. We are having a new suburbanization in America. Americans are moving where they can get single family homes for a more affordable price. Look at my population videos. I broke this down already multiple times. People are leaving New York and New Jersey because North Carolina has single family homes for cheaper. Because in New York, they can't get a home. They didn't say, I can't get an apartment that I share with 10 other people in New York. They said, I can't get a single family home in New York. They didn't say I couldn't get a triplex in New Jersey. They said, I can't get a single family home in New Jersey. They didn't say I can't find missing middle housing in Pennsylvania. Missing middle, right? It's all over Pennsylvania. Why isn't anyone moving there for it? Because they don't want it. This is democracy. Americans want their single family home. So unless you're going to change the demand for the single family home, you got no chance. But maybe I'm wrong. It goes back to politics. Get a politician in office that says he's going to turn down and deny new single family home development. You won't make it out of primaries. You won't make it out of primaries. The people have spoken. Now, the part that other media outlets, mainstream or social media, won't tell you, how do you make change? How do we change the system?
I won't respond to that.
How do we change the system? Well, I already told you earlier in the video, participation. Local elections have very low turnout. That means they are the easiest to influence. It starts at the local level. Zoning is a local proposition, at least in America. Clearly in Canada, that's not the case. But in America, the local government decides zoning. It's easy to sway these elections. So if you think you have the numbers, you know, when I was in high school, a wise man once said back in 2001, one Mr. Carter said, "We don't believe you. You need more people." I don't believe you. You need more people. I don't think you have the numbers to make the cities look the way you want them to look. But if you think I'm wrong, if you have the numbers, if you think you have the numbers, gather up the people who believe what you believe, Find the person who has the most charisma. Find the person who has the best communication skills. Get them in the primary so they can get elected into office. You get 1 in, you get 2 in, you get 3 in. Next thing you know, you control the city council. And you can turn down new single-family home development. Dense development only. Multifamily units only. Rezone existing single-family developments for multifamily. If you think you have the numbers. But like I said, I don't think you have the numbers. And I think you know you don't have the numbers. But maybe I'm wrong. Get the person who's the best communicator, get them in the primary, take over the city council. The NIMBYs have power because they vote. The boomers have power because they vote. You can easily outvote them if you participate. The other thing you need to do is engage with the community. Like you, a lot of other people don't participate in the process. And all these people who don't participate are potential people who can vote on your side if you actually engage with them. You see, here in America, we are very individualistic. Most of us don't even know our neighbors. That's why we like single-family homes, because we get to be isolated to our family. That's one of the reasons we like them. Multifamily means you have to share things with others. You have to be around others a lot. We don't like being around each other like that, if we're being honest. How many people do you know, for my young people who live in multifamily units right now, how many of your neighbors do you know? You can probably count them on one hand. But all these people in your community, in your neighborhood, that you don't know, are potential people who could vote for your cause. But that means you got to get outside the echo chamber. You can't just talk to people who already believe what you believe. That means you have to engage with other people. You got to recruit people. It's like sales. And when you get all those people, you can easily overpower the so-called NIMBYs, the boomers, Gen X. We should be killing them when it comes to voting. Most news, most discussions are had online now. Gen Z grew up with technology. Us millennials, technology came of age when we were in high school or in college. How are they still beating us? Because we don't participate. All right, so final thoughts on the matter. What do I think about all this stuff that we've said? First, will anything change? Will Gen Z and millennials participate? I don't think so. I think most people just want to complain online. Most people just want to whine. Most people want a place to moan and vent and get their frustration off. And I get that. That's cool. But that's all I think most millennials and Gen Z want. So I don't see that changing. You know, there's just going to be more complaints and comments that don't translate to votes, more ones and zeros on the code line for Instagram. More money for content creators pushing outrage. More money for the mainstream media pushing outrage. That's it. And that's cool. You know, if it's about the money, it's about the money. YouTube is good money. The other strategy that I've seen, we're just going to wait for the boomers and Gen X to die off. That's not going to work, guys. Because what happens when they die off? When boomers die off and Gen X dies off, millennials and Gen Z become the new boomers and Gen X. Yep, you're 21 now, you're single now, you don't have a family. Cool, of course you don't want a single family home. Who are you going to live in it with? When you're 40, when you got a wife and you got kids, 45, 50, you ain't going to want to live in the city. You want that single family home too. You become the new NIMBY. You have a high income. You own property. You own stocks. You have 401ks and IRAs. And you want to protect what you have. So you become the new NIMBY. And then the generation after us starts complaining like we're complaining about the boomers. Nothing changes, the cycle repeats. So waiting for them to die off changes nothing. That's not going to change anything. And lastly, I want to leave you with the solution. Because I don't think you're going to actually take action to change anything politically. That's too much work. The solution, which is also one that I live by myself, move where what you want already exists. I'll say that again. The solution to all of this Whining and complaining is to move where what you want already exists. I'm a single man. I don't have a family yet. So I wanted to be somewhere that was walkable and dense. That's where I moved. To one of Denver's core neighborhoods because I wanted walkability and density. I didn't move to Centennial. I didn't move to Broomfield. I didn't move on the outskirts of Aurora. I moved where what I wanted already exists. Because I already know that the people who claim to want density aren't going to do anything politically. So you think I'm going to wait for that? Move where what you want already exists. The boomers already figured that out. Gen X already figured that out. They're leaving the Northeast because they can't get what they want. And they're not going to wait for or hope for some political change. They vote with their feet. They move to the South because they want a single family home and they know they're down there cheap. Gen Z and millennials, at least the ones that are complaining, haven't figured that out. If you want density, move where it already exists. And I don't want to hear the excuses that you can't afford it or you don't know where it is or there isn't any. I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for 13 years, one of the most sprawling cities in the country. Other than when I was in college, I lived in walkable neighborhoods in Charlotte. And no, they didn't cost a ton of money. My most recent apartment in Charlotte was a 2-bedroom in a walkable neighborhood for only $1,100 a month. What are we talking about? You know how to use Google. My apartment here in Denver. Now, this is an expensive apartment. I won't deny that. But there are other units in my neighborhood that are half the price of mine. But we want to be like Europe and Japan, right? Those are small units. I mean, my unit's is a larger unit. But if you want to be like Europe and Japan, there are some cheap, tiny units near where I live that are very walkable right here in Denver and cheaper. What's wrong with getting a tiny unit? You want to be like Japan, right? Japan doesn't have 1,000 square foot apartments for cheap. Move where what you want already exists. And you can't tell me you don't know how to use Google. The first words out of your mouth when you were born were Google, if you're a Gen Z. So that's the solution, guys. Stop complaining. Start taking action. I suggest you try politically first, which I don't think you will. And if that doesn't work, then you will inevitably reach the same conclusion that I reached a long time ago. Gen Z ain't gonna vote. Millennials ain't gonna vote. So move where what you want already exists. And for those back with the bike lanes in Toronto, stay out of private business. Hold your politicians accountable when they don't do what you want. If you're afraid of Doug Ford, just say so. I didn't know he was that scary, but apparently the people of Toronto are afraid of Mr. Doug Ford because they won't protest him directly. Hold your politicians accountable. Canadians, Americans, especially the local ones. Your local politicians are right downtown in your street. You can reach out and touch them. You can't reach out and touch that guy in DC. He don't care what you say because he's in power for the next 3 years regardless. But these politicians, these local level politicians, if you participate, they'll take note. Thanks for watching, guys. We just had to go ahead and address those talking points. Hope you got something out of this video. Now, some people might be angry and unsubscribe after this. I don't really care. Now, for those who actually like hearing the facts of the situation, the reality in the country, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.